Hello, and welcome to Random House Children's Books 2025 Spring Preview. I'm Sarah Hunter, Books for Youth and Graphic Novels Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Setting. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be removed. We have a wonderful event planned for you today, and we will hear from the Random House Children's Books team a little later in the program. But first, we'll have a conversation with our special guests, Julio Anta, Kay O'Neill, and Andrea Beatriz Arango. I'll take a minute to introduce our guests, and then we'll dive into our discussion. Julio is a Cuban and Colombian American author from Miami, Florida. He currently resides in New York City, where he works to tell stories about diverse Latinx characters for readers of all ages. He is best known for his comic book series Home and his work at Marvel and DC Comics. Julio is making his middle grade debut with Speak Up, Santiago. Kay O'Neill is an author and illustrator based in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and a lover of nature, tea, and growing things. They strive to make books with themes of kindness, inclusiveness, and well-being, with worlds that children can play in and characters they can explore these ideas alongside. Past acknowledgments of their work include a 2019 Eisner nominee for Best Children's Comic for Aquacorn Cove, a 2018 Eisner winner for Best Children's Comic, 2018 Eisner winner for Best Web Comic, 2018 Harvey Co-winner for Best Children's Comic, 2018 Dwayne McDuffie Award winner for Kids Comics for Tea Dreg Society, the 2017 ALA Amelia Bloomer List, the 2017 Dwayne McDuffie Kids Comics Award nominee Princess Ever After. And finally, Andrea Beatriz Arango is the author of Newbery Honor Book Evilise Explains It All and Pura Belpre Honor Book Something Like Home. She was born and raised in Puerto Rico, where she first became a teacher. She then spent a decade in the United States working in public schools and nonprofits. When she is not busy writing about middle schoolers and their families, you can find her hoping to spot manatees at the beach. Andrea lives in Puerto Rico with her family. Welcome, Julio, Kay, and Andrea. I'm so excited to talk to about these three wonderful titles. But first, could you please all give our attendees a brief introduction to your book? Why don't we go in bio order? So, Julio, can you go first? Tell us about Speak Up, Santiago.
Sure. So this is my early ARC reader of Speak Up, Santiago, and it's a book that I'm both extremely proud of and excited to tell everybody about. It is my middle grade graphic novel debut, illustrated by my friend Gabby Mendez. And it is about a Colombian American boy named Santiago who, like many second, third generation Latino kids in the US, has a lot of anxiety and really struggles with his Spanish speaking abilities. At the beginning of our book, he's on his way to a small town called Hillside Valley, where he's about to spend the summer with his grandmother, who only speaks Spanish, as a way of trying to immerse himself in the language. And along the way, he meets a bunch of new friends that really kick off our Hillside Valley series with this book.
Thank you. Kay, tell us a little bit about your book.
So my book, A Song for You and I, is a fantasy that kind of straddles between middle grade and YA a little bit. And it's about Rowan, who's training to become a ranger, and as part of that has the strong partnership with a flying horse, which was fun to write and then less fun to draw. But they, through Rowan's kind of need to prove something about being a ranger, about being brave, ends up putting their horse Kestrel in danger and means she can't fly. So throughout the book, sort of Rowan sort of has to figure out how to be this ranger, protect the environment without this kind of partner that with the horse unable to fly and having to find a kind of more like grounded perspective on the earth, on the people, and meeting a shepherd and forming a kind of bond and going on a journey.
Wonderful. Andrea, how about you? Tell us about your book.
Yeah, so first of all, this is exciting because it's the first time I've talked to anyone about this book. So thank you for having me here. It's All or Nothing VALE is about Valentina, who's a competitive fencer and takes it very seriously, is very much a perfectionist, very competitive. She has an injury, and so when the book starts, she is just coming back from several months away from fencing and kind of expecting to walk into her fencing gym and continue being, the fencing queen that she always has been. But there's this new girl who has kind of taken her spot in the time that she's been away. And so a rivalry forms. If you can have a rivalry that's one-sided, because it's very much on the part of Valentina. But it's sort of about her kind of coming to terms with whether things are worth doing if you're not the absolute best at them. As you can see by the title, she does have an it's all or nothing sort of mentality. So it's all about her coming to terms with the fact that there are other people who now might be better at fencing than her, and also just the fact that she has some chronic pain after her injury, and so she's not fencing exactly the way that she used to. And I'm really excited to share this book with you all.
Wonderful. So Kay, one thing I noticed about your book and a lot of your books in general is that it has a very slow and quiet pace. There are many stretches of panels that focus on Rowan's observations of the natural world without any dialogue or action. And I'm curious about what draws you to this kind of drawn out, slow paced storytelling.
I guess I've always loved those quiet moments. I guess almost the kind of white space in a film where it's just like you have, especially in like Studio Ghibli films and a lot of others, it's like that moment that the emotions really reflected rather than sort of told. So I really love that. And I think in particular landscape is great because I think we all have our emotions come up so naturally when we look at the landscape. Whatever we are feeling ends up, we're kind of projecting it, or maybe it teaches us something about what we're feeling without even realizing it. So I've always really loved exploring that. And I think it creates a really good space for children to sort of play almost and be able to see what they like, see their own emotions as well, not just the characters, not just what I'm trying to tell them, but their own thoughts, and maybe to offer that invitation to sort of interpret things their own way and imagine. But yeah, I also just really love drawing landscapes. And I'm from New Zealand, so it's something that's just in my bones, in my DNA. They're all like, there's so many from Mothkeeper and also A Song for You and I, many backgrounds are based on photos or places that I've been since I was a child. So it's really special to be able to weave those in as well.
Lovely. Julio, you and the artist you work with, Gabby Mendez, do an excellent job depicting a language barrier, both in Santi's frustration and in the actual speech balloon. I'll describe that a little bit for our listeners since they're not looking at pages, but in some of the dialogue that Santi is listening to, if he doesn't understand a word, it's literally scratched out, so you can't read it either as a reader. And I'm really curious about how you approach that component of the story.
Yeah, this book is a book that's really personal to me because it does come from a lot of my own experiences as someone who Spanish was my first language. And then when I started attending school, English became my dominant language. And that's the way that you describe the speech bubbles and the use of language in the book is truly the way that I feel like I and a lot of other people experience language when you understand maybe the words surrounding a theme, or you're understanding certain words in a sentence, but then another word is just totally foreign to you. That to me felt like the most true way of depicting it in a graphic novel. But also, I think it's important to note that the entire book is bilingual. So there are those moments where, Santi is your POV in the story, so you're experiencing it like he does. But as he gets better, you also start seeing that entire speech bubbles are also translated into Spanish, and vice versa. When they speak in English, it's also translated into Spanish in certain areas. So, I think it's something that is very close to my heart and my experience. And it was a really unique way that I was super lucky to work with Gabby, who's an amazing artist and can depict these language barriers and unique ways of depicting language in a way that we're both really happy with, and I think comes off as a genuine experience.
And Andrea, you regularly write novels in verse. And I'm curious about what draws you to this type of writing and what makes you think it's so appealing for middle grade readers in particular.
Yeah, I was originally drawn to writing it back when I read my first ever verse novel, which was The Poet X. Before that, I didn't know verse novels were a thing. And I loved it because it combined two things that I really loved, which was novels, but then also poetry that was sort of meant to be read aloud. I was very into spoken word poetry and like slam poetry at the time. But I also really liked how accessible it felt to my students. Back then, I was teaching middle school English language learners who didn't have the language proficiency or the stamina to really read the same prose novels that their classmates were reading. And so I actually used both novels in verse and graphic novels a lot as a teacher because I just found them so much more accessible for the students that I had in my classroom. But I think aside from that, there's an intimacy to verse novels that really puts you in the main character's head. They're books that tend to be a little more introspective. And I think that can be really appealing for middle grade readers who are looking to sort of deeply connect with characters who may be going through similar experiences as them. So that's just something that I personally like, both as a reader and as a writer of verse novels.
So all of your books involve a character who is sort of trying hard to prove themselves and finding an opportunity to like accept themselves for who they are. And I'm really curious about what makes this emotional arc such a relevant story for readers in your target age range. Would anybody like to start?
I can start.
Julio, wonderful.
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit about the anxiety that comes with speaking a language that you're not comfortable with or learning a new language. I think a lot of people can relate to that, not just kids that are trying to communicate with their families. But I think it's so much more heightened in the context of Santi and a lot of us who have family members that don't speak English, because that is our only connection to these people who love us and who we have so much love for. And through his character arc, Santi starts as this very, he's this kid that feels everything, right? He wants so badly to not be perceived negatively. He wants to feel confident in the way that he speaks. And he goes on this journey that through the friends that he makes, through playing soccer with those friends, he gains a certain confidence, but also, every bit of criticism that he gets from, or perceived criticism that he gets about the way he speaks from his family, just haunts him in a way. And we depict that also in a really unique dream sequence in the book. But really, at the end of the day, we get to this place in his character arc where he comes to realize that his family loves him for who he is. And they acknowledge that he loves his culture and that he's trying, and that's truly what matters, not how proficient you are in a language or if you can conjugate things correctly. And I think that's something that, not just kids who are from Santi's cultural perspective, but I think all of us can appreciate and all of us can relate to. Yeah, I think that the bit about anxiety is I think it's a part that we all feel so much nowadays. And that makes Santi so relatable.
Hey, how about you? What do you think makes it so resonant for readers?
I guess for me, it was from quite a personal place, which is, I guess, when you're sort of navigating your identity as a queer person, you often feel like you have to prove that you are queer enough or trans enough, or that you are worthy of asking people to call you by a different name, but asking people to call you by different pronouns. So I wanted to kind of capture that in a kind of visual metaphor and create that, and to kind of explore that through the kind of the journey that the character goes on, and just that feeling that can be really hard to name, and you may not even realize it until years later, where you look back on yourself and realize that you've been afraid for all that time, but you couldn't explain why, and feeling like you've got to be worthy of just being asked to be seen the way that you really are by others. So I kind of wanted to show that and share that, and hopefully give kids inspiration to, you know, to ask and to just be accepted, and that people will hear them. Yeah.
Andrea, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what you've both said. And I think it's wild to think about it now, because I like to think that I was under so much pressure back when I was, middle school age, but kids now are under so much more pressure that it's really hard to imagine, especially with all the social media apps that exist now that didn't exist when I was a teenager. And like Kay said, we put all this expectation on people to be worthy of their identities, and that could be, your identity at school or your identity of, like, we want kids to be successful in the same way that we want adults to be successful, and I think that can be really hard. And for some kids, a book might be the only place where they're hearing that message of, it's not actually all or nothing, and things are very nuanced, and you're just enough the way you are, because they might not be getting that messaging at home or at school or among their peers. So yeah, I think all of our books will really resonate with readers who are experiencing arcs like that in their own real life, and who maybe need to hear those messages.
The process of figuring out who you are and is such a universal one. And all of your books touch on it in like very individual ways, which I really liked, that like point of connection across all of them together. I thought that was really nice. So you touched on this a little bit, Andrea, when you were talking about your teaching experience, but I think a lot of people still will call graphic novels and novels in verse untraditional formats. And I'm curious what you think that artwork or poetry can do better than a traditional novel. Andrea, since you started out talking about this, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think we have gotten a lot better, but there are definitely still teachers and librarians and parents who don't think their kids are truly reading if they're not reading kind of a traditional prose novel. But I do think we're moving in the right direction. And yeah, like I said earlier, obviously there's a level of accessibility that graphic novels and novels in verse provide, not just for language learners, but for any child who is not reading at the same level as their peers. And that could be because they don't have the language skills or the reading skills, but it could also just be because they have trouble focusing and reading something with a lot more white space on the page might be helpful, or something that's shorter, has a lot of images. So I think that's something that these types of books provide that other books can't. And yeah, just like I said before, also that kind of dialed in, like, intimate focus, whether it's through text and verse novels or through images and graphic novels. I feel like there's just a way to show expressions and emotions and like moods and tones in a way that's a little bit different from prose novels. And I think all of these books should be studied together, because they all might be showing the same things, but in different ways and in different formats. And all reading is reading. Big fan of reading in any format.
Kay, that reminds me of what you were saying about like the intimacy of just like getting somebody's point of view and seeing what they're observing, and having an opportunity to just sort of like see that for yourself and interpret it for yourself. Can
Yeah, and I
you speak
think
to
to
that a
build
little?
on that idea of the kind of, as Andrea was saying about accessibility, I think visual metaphors can be very accessible too. Like if you simply, it's something that yeah, regardless of reading level, which and regardless of you know, it's something that they're practicing as they're going through the world all the time, is looking for meanings, looking for patterns, looking for ideas, and there's so much media and there's a lot less media literacy. So I think having these different formats is really, really important, so that, you know, because I think verse and art are both show don't tell sort of mediums, where there's a lot of interpretation, a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's so intuitive and there's no wrong answers. So I think they're really, really awesome spaces. And for me, I always try to build a graphic novel around a visual metaphor. Like with Mothkeeper, it's a girl who's got to look after these moths with a single lantern going out into this desert every night. So that's just, as a single image, there's a lot that I think kids could pick up from that, even if they can't, you know, read as much around the you know, even if they're not reading as fluently the entire book. It's like you can kind of get emotions and ideas just from the visuals as well.
Yeah, I think building off that a little bit too is what's great about graphic novels is that it allows readers to contextualize, I think, in a very different way than they do in prose novels. You know, I think to one of my previous books, Frontera, it takes place in the Sonoran Desert. And I think, you know, sometimes when kids are reading something that doesn't have a visual element, you know, they might read the word desert and think of the Sahara Desert, or think of, you know, a barren desert, and not realize that, you know, a place like the Sonoran Desert, for example, is filled with life, not just plant life, but animal life. And I think also, you know, there's data that has shown us that readers are able to understand more complex words when they see it in the context of images, like graphic novels. So I think they're great tools for teachers and educators. And you know, to Andrea's point, I think we are seeing a lot more acceptance of graphic novels. And I think there's always room to grow, but you know, I think a lot of books like ours, especially those that have educator guides that come along with them, can be really helpful and useful in the classroom.
I also want to add, I think like the thing that really struck me about your book in particular, Julio, is how the visual medium so tidily represented the emotional reality of feeling confused about language. And you don't have to have like a long paragraph describing feelings. You can just sort of visualize it very easily in that one moment. And I think the show don't tell component, like even when you're talking about the way words are printed in a graphic novel, is just so resonant in both poetry and graphic novels.
Yeah, and if I can add just one more thing as well, with graphic novels, you know, you can, because you have color, you can also use that to express emotions in, I think, really unique ways too, in ways that might be colored unconventionally, but really dive into your point of the emotion behind a character in an image.
Mm-hmm. What drives you to keep making books? Andrea, can you go first?
So I mean, I think the first thing is I have so many stories to tell. And, you know, I like to think that I would keep writing them no matter what, because I wrote many stories before I ever became published. But I think now that I'm in it, you know, that I've been accepted into the publishing world, I think that also adds like a second drive to it, you know, because the kinds of books that all three of us are making are books that are still very much in the minority of what is being published today in Kidlit. So I don't take that opportunity lightly, you know, that I not only do I get to keep telling stories that I want to tell, but I also have the opportunity to keep writing books about Puerto Rican kids like me. And, you know, in the case of It's All or Nothing Vale, you know, queer Puerto Rican kids and sporty Puerto Rican kids and disabled Puerto Rican kids. Like there's not enough of those stories out there. And so I think for me, it's partly how much I love telling stories, but partly just I feel so grateful to have the opportunity to keep putting out books, and I want to see more books like mine continue to get published.
Yeah. How about what drives you to keep making books?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I feel exactly the same, where it's such a privilege to be able to go into a shop and see that your book is there, and it still fills me with a huge thrill every single time. And so I guess all I can do is try to take, I guess, things I wish I'd not even wish, but just things that would have really helped if I'd thought about earlier or like known about earlier, or just even working through parts of myself, to be honest, being able to kind of like take those and explore them visually with metaphor and maybe find closure, be able to kind of express them in different ways is like really, really important.
And Julio, tell me.
Yeah, similar to what Kay said, like a young Julio would have loved this book, Speak Up Santiago, and it would have made him feel a lot better about what he was going through. And I just think of that young version of me whenever writing is hard. Writing is really hard. And there's a lot of days when you feel like you just can't do it. And those are the days when I just remind myself of, the books that I wish existed when I was a kid, and that I know, would help a lot of kids that are, of that age now. But then also kind of like Andrea, that I have so many ideas too. I just like I can't help myself. So, it's less of what pushes me and like the things that propel me to not be able to not do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What's stopping you? Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one question, and I'm going to make this a quick one. What's the book that made you want to make your own books? Kay, I'll start with you.
So mine's a cheat, it's not a book, but I think with graphic novels, it's fine to count films because they're so similar, but Spirited Away for sure was just so, as an 11-year-old, and even now, it's still just it.
Yeah, it's a magical one. I agree. That's a great one. Julio, how about you? What book made you want to make your own books?
Off the top of my head, the book that I remember just like really connecting with and feeling seen by when I was a teenager, which I feel like it sounds almost like stereotypical now, but it was The Perks of Being a Wallflower. That's a book that I just really connected with, and it was written in letters, and I don't know why that made it seem more approachable, or like it might be easier to write for me. I know now in hindsight that doesn't make anything easier, but it was written in such an approachable way, that I think did inspire me to feel like I could do this myself.
And Andrea, what book made you want to make books?
I think I'm gonna cheat a little because I wanted to be a writer since I was so little that I couldn't possibly tell you like what inspired me. But I do think as writers, we continue to get inspired every year. And so I feel like every year there's a book I read that I'm like, oh, yes, this author nailed it. And I want to do that too. And this year it was Ebb and Flow by Kelly J. Baptist, because it was a dual point of view book, which I haven't attempted yet, but I want to. I have one in the works. And the voices of the characters were so distinct and so authentic, 'cause she's a teacher too, that really inspired me this year. Like, okay, Andrea, you can also write a book that has multiple points of view. And I think that's important to say because I feel like we get inspired by each other all the time too. So
that is a fantastic note to end on because we are out of time. Thank you so much to Julio, Kay, and Andrea. That was a really great conversation. Thank you so much for your generosity with your answers. I'll now pass things off to the Random House Children's School and Library team to present their Spring 2025 titles. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again to our panelists. That was an amazing conversation, and we just really loved it. Okay, so welcome to the Random House Children's Books Spring 2025 preview. My name is Erica Stone, and I'm the manager of library marketing. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we are thrilled to share some of our amazing books coming up next season. So let's kick things off with some picture books. Okay, Emotions and Feelings. Okay, we are so excited to present the next great picture book from Caldecott medalist Matthew Cordell. This is the story of Janie, a girl who has always dreamed of seeing an owl. She searches everywhere for signs of the elusive creatures, on the open prairie for short-eared owls, on the beach for snowy owls, and for great horned owls in the woods near her home. But months go by and she sees no owls. She wonders what it will take to see one. This is a beautiful story about quiet perseverance that will resonate with anyone who has experienced the anticipation of discovering a rare treasure in the wild. Next slide. Anjali Khan. Anjali is back and ready to prove that there's nothing she can't do. She has so many happy memories at her local community center, but it's being forced to close. Unwilling to let the center shut, she is determined to keep it open. People may say there's nothing that she can do about it, but she knows she can and must act. This book has a timely and resonant message that one voice can be very powerful. Her can-do attitude will teach young readers how to organize for a cause they believe in and to create positive change in their communities. The themes of believing in oneself and always trying to do good will resonate with teachers and students who enjoy books with activism focus. Next slide. Space for everyone. When Zainab runs down the stairs in the morning, she knows what she'll find. Papa cooking at the stove, Mama pouring tea, and everyone gathered around the family table. Neighbors stop by, and there's plenty of space for them too. The table is a place for homework and crafts, aunties plaiting hair, and uncles, cousins, and friends playing board games. But soon boxes start to pile up around the house, and Zainab worries about her upcoming move. Will these special moments feel the same in her new house? Moving is such a common childhood milestone, and it can be a difficult one for kids to process. This book reminds us that it's not the house that makes the memories, but it's the people gathered around the table. Next slide. Grumpy Monkey Mom for a Day. The New York Times bestselling Grumpy Monkey series returns with a celebration of relationships between mothers and their children. When Chimpanzee offers to step in as temporary mom, he thinks it'll be fun. How hard can it be? But when he's immediately bombarded with a chorus of needs, "Carry me, mommy," and "I'm hungry," Grumpy Monkey doesn't know what to do. He tries his best, but when the baby animals start falling out of the tree, Jim is completely overwhelmed. That's when his mom swings down, picks him up, calms the baby animals, and makes everything right. Jim understands and appreciates the power of parenting and the unconditional love his mom has for him. Next slide. Otto and the Story Tree. This picture book celebrates the power of imagination and the connections that are made through storytelling. A cranky old bird named Otto lives in a dirty and dark house. He could dust, but who could be bothered? One day, while making his evening meal, he drops a seed on the floor. He could pick it up, but who could be bothered? And so he settles into his armchair and starts to tell a story about being caught in a fierce storm while riding in a hot air balloon. When he wakes up the next morning, the seed has sprouted. And so, at the end of the day, he settles in to spin another yarn. At the end of the book, the sprout has grown into a full-grown tree, which actually grows right through the top of his house, and animals gather in the top branches every night to listen to one of Otto's marvelous stories. Otto begins the story as a lonely bird, but he is able to connect with others through his stories. Next slide. The Jade Bracelet. The Jade Bracelet is based on the author's own experience of being the new kid at school and wanting to blend in. Now an elementary teacher, Ha Din encourages her immigrant students to share and honor their family's traditions. Although Tien lives in Vietnamese traditions her family celebrates, more than anything, she wants to fit in at school and be just like her classmates. So when all the girls start wearing brand new sparkly bracelets, Tien tries to hide her simple jade bracelet her mother gave her in memory of her grandmother. Now her bracelet looks like an old green thing, and an embarrassed Tien runs home crying, flinging it to the floor. Her sympathetic mama understands and takes her to the shop to buy a new popular bracelet. But at the last minute, Chan remembers her grandmother's love and decides to wear her jade bracelet proudly. And I'll hand things over to Katie D.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Dutton, and I'm the School and Library Digital Marketing Manager. We can go to the next slide. For the Black community, washing your hair can feel like an event in and of itself. For many, wash day isn't just a routine, but an intimate ritual that is a symbol of self-love, pride, and connection. This self-care practice, while individual to the person, can root them in their culture and allow them to embrace generations of hair traditions. Filled with heartwarming illustrations, Wash Day with Mama centers on a little girl cherishing each step of her hair washing routine with her mother, while Mama imparts her wisdom and stresses the importance of self-care, loving yourself, and being proud of who you are. Next slide, please. Based on Newbery honor-winning author Vera Hiranandani's own family history, Many Things at Once is a moving story about a young girl from two different backgrounds. The girl's mother tells her story about her mother, a Jewish seamstress in Brooklyn, New York. Her father tells stories of his mother, the girl's other grandmother, who liked to cook bubbling dal at a coal stove in Pakistan. The girl sometimes feels out of place, as if she's the, quote, only one like me. But soon she realizes it's okay to feel and be many things at once. Next slide. In Love, Dad, 18 fathers from different walks of life come together to create a unique and irresistible compilation of hopes for their children. The sweet picture book is presented in the form of an extended letter from a dad to his kids. It's a letter about fatherhood, pulled from the experiences of different dads, all finishing the sentence, I hope you, ... Paired with vibrant illustrations from debut artist David Elmo Cooper, this is a touching celebration of fathers everywhere. Next slide. Rose Weaves a Garden is the story of 7-year-old Rose and her Baba June, which means dear grandfather in Farsi. Based on the author's own grandfather, who was a rug weaver in Iran, Baba June spends his mornings working in a big factory weaving rugs ordered by customers all over the world, and his afternoons at his own loom, weaving brightly colored rugs for himself, his family, and his friends. In awe of the beautiful and intricate rugs he creates and the thousands of knots he ties for each one, Rose asks Baba June to teach her how to weave her own. What follows is a tender story of creativity, perseverance, love, and the bond between generations. And I will pass this over to Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Campbell, Assistant Director of School Marketing on the School and Library team, and I'm here to talk to you about our humorous picture books. Next slide, please. Everyone has a rough day now and then and wishes that they could be something different or be someone different. Not even beloved characters like Santa Claus, Ghost, and Leprechauns are immune to this. In the It's Not Easy picture book series, we explore this concept with witty ways that these iconic holiday and seasonal characters search for happiness, only to find it within themselves. This new installation is the perfect way to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with little lads and lassies. Next slide, please. It's always tough when a third person enters a close friendship, even when it involves a child, a cat, and a favorite toy. Squash the Cat displays a case of such silly jealousy that readers know it all will work out at the end. In this story of accountability and forgiveness, these cute characters help kids learn the important lesson of owning up to your own actions and mistakes, and also being able to accept an apology. Next slide, please. What do you get when you add confetti inside empty eggshells and then seal them? Cascarno. Celebrate this joyous Latin tradition with Tody and his family and this humorous story that sprinkles in Spanish words throughout. Full of witty puns, mischief, and sunny side up charm, this intergenerational story honors the fun and playfulness of this timeless tradition that takes place during Easter and beyond. There will also be a simultaneous Spanish edition released with the English edition. Excuse me. Next slide, please. We all fell in love with the teeniest, weeniest unicorn, and he's back, and he's still on his quest to be even bigger. With a little help from a princess, a dandelion, and some lucky wind, the teeny weeny unicorn fulfills his wish, kind of. With characters that will crack you up and illustrations to brighten any day, here is a modern fairy tale from Caldecott Honor-winning creator of Have You Ever Seen a Flower? Next slide, please. Every family who ever spent a sleepless night with a newborn baby will feel seen in this hilarious new picture book about the uncanny ability of babies to stay awake forever from a mom who's been there. They tried lullabies, they tried cuddles, they tried soothing words, but it's 3 a.m. and the baby has achieved a new level of consciousness. Throwing binkies, climbing the crib. Is there anything that this baby will not fall asleep for? Even the neighbor would like to know if the baby will ever go to sleep. Parents and siblings of new babies will share some big laughs together as they follow a very tired family trying to get Just a few minutes of rest while their precious one jumps, pounds, yells, and even throws a 1 a.m. dance party. This is the perfect baby shower gift for parents and soon to be big siblings to say congratulations and also I feel your pain. Next slide, please. This friendship story has a delightful mix of practical advice, kindness, and whimsy. Shy Alfred wants to befriend the girl whose yard is filled with flowers and other kids, but he doesn't know how. And after attempting to make the biggest and most beautiful garden of his own to attract friends, he never quite gets it right. Alfred learns that quality time spent together is the best way to actually make a friend. Next slide. You think your family is weird? What if your dad was a unicorn? And what if your mom had fins? And a sparkling debut of former writer for The Simpsons takes us on 2 wild rides with the weirdest families ever and a 2-book launch of an exciting new series, My Life is Weird. Follow a boy and his unicorn dad as they battle as they battle trolls and Merry Muffin Meadows, then join a girl and her mermaid mom on an undersea adventure full of corny mom jokes. With endless jokes, laughs, and gags on every page, plus stickers, these 2 books are sure to become kid favorites. Next slide, please. Yellow cat, green hat. Dig this, clear that. Come dump dirt and pour cement and operate a crane with a group of colorful cats. A joyful read aloud. This is a simple rhyming text that readers will learn the blueprints and get to the final construction in a book that's perfect for fans of diggersaurs. And next slide, please. For Panda, there is nothing worse than being bored. It's just so boring. Come along with a tech-obsessed panda as he goes from having a boring no screens day to a joyful out and about and the outdoorsy type of day. New York Times best-selling creator of Awkward Family Photos wants you to know that being bored is actually not boring. It's a chance to discover all the things that might be possible in the world. And now over to Natalie.
Hi, everyone. It's Natalie Capagrossi, Senior Manager of School Marketing. Very happy to be here and talking first about some nonfiction picture books, starting off with bird lore. Before Florence Merriam Bailey, there was no such thing as bird watching, but Florence changed all that. A bird lover since childhood, she wanted to show the world what made these creatures special. She hoped everyone would care as much as she did, and so she taught classes, printed pamphlets, and eventually began leading bird walks so people could see it with their own eyes. The current popularity of birding is a testament to Florence's belief that science should be hands-on, accessible to anyone with a sturdy pair of shoes and a curiosity about nature. With gorgeous illustrations by award-winning artist Devin Holsworth, Florence's story takes flight in soaring spreads that capture her inquisitive spirit and passionate advocacy for our feathered friends. Rich back matter, including birding tips, biographical facts, and supplemental information on the birds that appear in the book, all by acclaimed author Jess Keating. Next slide, please. You are a wildlife warrior. You might remember Bindi Irwin making appearances on The Crocodile Hunter when she was a little girl. Bindi has carried on her father's legacy since then, working as a conservationist. She aims to involve people in the protection of wildlife, especially through her efforts running the Australia Zoo. Now, you don't have to travel to Australia to walk through the zoo or learn about conservation. This delightful picture book takes readers on an informative trip around the zoo with accessible rhyming text. It has fun animal facts scattered throughout and realistic depictions of animals. The book also features a personal letter from Bindi and inspirational back matter with never-before-seen photos of the Irwin family, including Bindi and her sweet baby daughter, Grace. This book will remind every reader that they too can be a wildlife warrior, protecting our planet and its animals. Next slide, please. Next year in the White House. In the year 1800, President John Adams held the first formal Christmas dinner at the White House. In 1878, Rutherford B. Hayes hosted the first Easter egg roll. But it wasn't until 2009 that the first presidential Passover took place. It all started 1 year earlier with former President Barack Obama on the campaign trail. 3 of Obama's staffers gathered for a Seder dinner on the road, held in the basement of the Pennsylvania Hotel. The then presidential candidate joined them. When they arrived at the traditional toast to next year in Jerusalem, Obama added his own toast, next year in the White House. A year later, his staffers and his family joined them for a Seder dinner. Yes, in the White House. This book tells the whole story and includes back matter with notes from the staffers that originated the dinner on the campaign trail. Back matter also contains information about Passover, its relevance in Black history, and more. Next slide, please. And now we're on to books about civics and government. The Cookie Vote. This addition to the Mr. Tiffin Classroom series might just give you a sweet tooth. In the Cookie Vote, Mr. Tiffin students get a lesson on how state government, and specifically how a state bill, is passed. When Mr. Tiffin announces to the class that whoever has the best idea for a bill will have the opportunity to present their bill to a state representative during a class trip to the Capitol, there are all kinds of different ideas. But one student believes that they should name an official state cookie. At first, it seems like a brilliant idea until it comes time to vote on the flavor. But the class learns the importance of compromise. The students follow it all the way from an idea to a bill and eventually to a state law. The Cookie Vote is a valuable civics lesson taught with all the right ingredients. Next slide, please. Book comes home. It's easy to be saddened, dismissive, or discouraged by news of book banning. It takes a compassionate mind to fight for the next generation, and that is what Rob Sanders has done in this book. He shows what it is like to be a banned book from the book's point of view. Book wonders how she can be a book if no one will read her. She enjoys sharing moments with her readers so much. This is a story that is simple enough for the youngest of readers to understand and occupies a space entirely unto itself in the picture book space. The author, Rob Sanders, has experience with book banning firsthand. Pride, the Story of Harvey Milk, was one of the most banned books of 2021. So this story works hard to show how libraries are safe havens for everyone to enjoy. Next slide, please. And Getting Ready for First Grade. This is the latest addition to the Getting Ready series by Vera Ahia, also known as the Tutu Teacher. Vera is a former kindergarten teacher who puts her experience from the classroom into all of her books. Like the rest of the books in this Getting Ready series, it offers students a chance for a preview. A new grade or a new event in a school year is completely unknown to them before they experience it. So this book gives students a taste of what it might be like so they feel more comfortable and confident walking proudly into first grade. And with that, I'll pass it over to Katie Halata.
Thank you, Natalie. My name is Katie Halata. I'm the Director of Library Marketing, and I'm going to share some picture books about science and nature. So we can go to the next slide, to A Pocket Full of Rocks. As a child, I was an avid rock collector. At the age of 41, I still insist that my parents hold on to my collection because you never know when those treasures will be needed. So I know better than anyone that rocks make excellent chairs for fairies. They are perfect for writing your name on the sidewalk or just to hold in your hand when you need reassurance. A Pocket Full of Rocks showcases how a creative child can see big possibilities in the smallest thing. It's about noticing, collecting, appreciating, and sharing the wonders all around us every day. Next slide. A Forest Song. Into the forest, dark and deep, with miles to go before I sleep. Beneath the holy oaks I wander. Here, oh my heart, just listen. A tribute to writers of the past, this stunning picture book by poet Kirsten Hall and award-winning illustrator Evan Turk reimagines classic lines of poetry from Robert Frost, Mary Oliver, Emily Dickinson, Edgar Allan Poe, and others, to celebrate the beauty of our forests and encourage readers to respect, honor, and be in awe of natural wonders. This is the perfect book to introduce young readers to poetry and to remind them to appreciate our local parks or national forests. Interactive back matter includes an author's note that explains what a cento poem is and fun activities for kids that will walk them through how to create their own. Next slide. Family, a peek through picture book. The latest installment in the best-selling series that began with Tree, a peek through picture book, gives readers a close-up look at animal families. Young children will enjoy peering through holes and seeing animal parents and their babies in global scenes of curiosity, security, and love. This series is a great way to introduce nonfiction to young children with a super simple format mixed with smartly placed cutout holes on each page that will keep young readers engaged. Next slide. The Lonely Goose. This lyrical and poignant nonfiction picture book about loss follows the lives of a pair of Canadian geese as they perform their courtship rituals, raise nests full of chicks, and migrate with the seasons, until one goose has to brave the world alone. With scientific facts, beautiful text, and gorgeous artwork, young readers will find themselves inspired to take a closer look at the natural world around them. Birds and Nature books more information about geese and their habits. Next. Over in the Garden. Based on the folk song Over in the Meadow, Over in the Garden is a bright and clever counting picture book that shows little gardeners coming together one by one to tend to a community garden. With plenty of rhyme and comforting repetition, plus counting from 1 to 10 as the gardeners arrive, this is an ideal book for read-alouds, plus springtime displays and reading lists. Next. The Littlest Drop. Featuring the final artwork of one of America's most beloved and accomplished illustrators, Jerry Pinkney, this empowering picture book celebrates ideas that every one of us, from the smallest to the largest, has something to offer. When a fire starts near their home, all of the animals, from the largest elephant to the smallest ant, are too scared to do anything but watch. All that is, except for a tiny hummingbird. She knows that she must do what she has to save her nest. With art completed by Jerry's son Brian after his death, The Littlest Drop reminds readers that we all have the power to change the world if we work together. Next slide. And speaking of working together, we leap together. A little boy and his mother set off on a day trip. Meanwhile, a mama whale and her calf swim towards the bay. On the way, they both sing, blow bubbles, get lost and found, and through it all, mama always stays close. This lyrical and beautifully illustrated picture book celebrates our connection to animals and to each other, and is perfect for enthusiasts. And now I will turn things back over to Erica.
Next slide. So new in paperback. On this slide are 4 popular picture books coming to paperback format in spring 2025. They will continue to attract new readers and are praised by educators and librarians and were state award winners when they first came out. And I will pass things over to Natalie, I think.
Again, here to talk about Step Into Reading. Step Into Reading is a comprehensive leveled reader program designed to give every child a successful reading experience. With 5 steps to reading proficiency, this line includes popular and beloved characters, nonfiction, phonics readers, sticker readers, and more, all illustrated with colorful art and photographs. In addition to steps, grade levels, and Fountas and Pinnell text levels offered to parents, teachers, and librarians, some additional guidance for selecting the right book for their child. Next slide, please. And on to chapter books. Next slide, please. If you're lucky, you've already had the chance to meet Fibsy Cross, an adorable and precocious character who is reminiscent of Junie B. Jones. This new series by acclaimed author Liz Garton-Scanlon already has 2 books out in the world, both selected by the Junior Library Guild. So next spring, you'll have to add this 3rd book to your collections. The short chapters and energetic verse lend themselves to emerging readers, and bright, warm illustrations from best-selling illustrator Sang Ho complement the text so well. In this story, the equilibrium of a class terrarium is upset, and Bright Bibsy takes matters into her own hands. This is the perfect new chapter book series for fans of Junie looking for the next read. Next slide, please. First, there were Absent Alpacas. then bats, then cougars, then dolphins, and now there are emus. Inspired by Ron Roy's A to Z Mystery series, this exciting animal adventure mystery is the right fit for budding young chapter book readers. This time, 8-year-old Abby and her friend solve the mystery of a missing emu egg. This is perfect for fans of the classic A to Z mysteries and Nate the Great, or anyone looking for a fun mystery read. Next slide, please. Earl and Worm. First, there was Frog and Toad. Now, there is Earl and Worm. An unlikely pairing, perhaps, but they're a dynamic duo. Earl is earnest, persistent. Worm is a little less chipper. So when Earl moves in next door, Worm is less than thrilled in 3 very funny tales. Open-hearted Earl befriends a worm, a cranky neighbor, and makes her days a little sweeter, most of the time. Greg Pizzoli is a Geisel Award-winning creator who has a keen eye for early readers. This is a series with more books coming very soon and is perfect for the readers just inching into the chapter book space. Next slide, please. And there is a chapter book for every reader. So we have 2 new series perfect for readers of Quest Fantasy and fans of Unicorn Academy. Llama Quest features a talking purple llama protecting the kingdom of Ravenwood, and Mermaid Academy shows an underwater adventure in which every mermaid finds their magic. Go on whirlwind magical adventures in these 2 new chapter book series. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it over to Jasmine.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Hello, I'm Jasmine, associate in the school and library team, and I'm sharing with you our graphic novels, starting with Dr. Seuss. Graphic novels, Green Eggs and Ham, Take a Hike. Dr. Seuss' iconic original dynamic duo is back, and this time, Sam and I Am is going to show his grumpy pal the world beyond green eggs and ham in this chapter book graphic novel. Sam I Am's grumpy best pal, Walter, is missing out on the great big world, but Sam I Am is determined to make sure he doesn't miss a thing. After all, that's what best friends are for. Walter doesn't know what the big deal is. Sure, it might be nice to have green eggs and ham picnic on a hike, but doesn't Sam I Am know about all the bugs and the flowers that make you sneeze? No, Walter is not a fan of the outdoors. He certainly is not, and nothing Sam I Am will do or say will change his mind. Too bad for Walter. Sam I Am is always up for the challenge. Next slide, please. Magic Treehouse Fact Tracker graphic novel, Dinosaurs. When Jack and Annie got back from their venture in the Magic Treehouse 1, Dinosaurs Before Dark, they had lots of questions about dinosaurs. Filled with up-to-date information and fun tidbits from Jack and Annie, the Magic Treehouse Fact Tracker graphic novels are the perfect way for kids to get out more about the topics they discovered in their favorite Magic Treehouse adventures. Find out the answers to things like, what did the dinosaurs look like? How did they survive? What's the difference between flesh eater and plant eaters? And of course, how did the dinosaurs die? Next slide, please. Fart Boy and Reeky Boy. Ricky Dog. Get ready for a new kind of superhero, a smelly one. One day at PU Smellementary, a regular kid named Fart Alamu discovers his farts are super strong enough to blow away some bad guys. But that's not the only thing he discovers. He finds a hidden lab in the school basement that belongs to the nefarious Professor Gravy Pants, the evil alien scientist who created him. When the professor's former minion, Ricky Dog, reveals that Professor Gravy Pants is getting ready for world domination, Fart Alamu decides to team up with this newly good Ricky Dog and use his fart powers for good. Next slide, please. Halfway to somewhere, Abe thought moving to Kansas would be boring and flat after enjoying the mountains and trails in Mexico, but at least they would have their family with them. Unfortunately, while Abe, their mom, and their younger brother are relocating to the U.S., Abe's father and older sister will be staying in Mexico permanently. Their parents are getting a divorce. It's as if learning a whole language wasn't hard enough, and now a middle schooler has to figure out a new family dynamic. This stunningly illustrated and thought-provoking middle grade novel is about exploring identity, understanding family, making friends with a language variant, and above all, learning what truly makes a place a home. Next slide, please. Up next, I have two additional titles that you've heard earlier about, starting with Speak Up Santiago. Santi is excited to spend the summer in Hillside Valley, meeting the local kids, eating his Isabela's delicious food, exploring. There's just one problem. Santi doesn't speak Spanish well, and it feels like everyone he meets in Hillside does. In between all of their adventures in Hillside, Santi can't help but worry about his Spanish. What if he can't keep up? Does that mean he's not Colombian enough? Will Santi find his confidence in his voice, or will his worries cost him his new friendships and the chance to play in the Hillside Summer Soccer Tournament? Next slide, please. And we also have A Song for You and I, from the best-selling author of The Moth Keeper and the Tea Dragon Society comes a must-read middle-grade graphic novel for fans of soft, sweeping fantasy romances. Rowan knows exactly what they want, to be a ranger protecting their village alongside their trusted flying horse, Kez. But when Rowan's eagerness to show off their worth gets Kez injured, Rowan is suddenly unsure if they're capable of being the protector they always dreamed of becoming. While Kez is healing, Rowan is assigned a slow and winding expedition across the outlying lands with sheep herder Leon. But Leon's own struggles and endless support brings a new possibility to Rowan. Could their unlikely friendship be something more? And if it is, will Rowan be able to leave Leon behind to pursue being a ranger once Kez is healed? Next slide, please. In YA graphic novels, we have Brielle and Bear. Once upon a time, Brielle met Bear, and then they fell in love. But that's just the beginning. Fairy tales have a way of twisting and swirling before you get to the happily ever after. And though modern day Once Upon a Time University first year Brielle is a dreamer, always with her nose in a book, her imagination can't help but to run wild with potential romance. To her, Bear is perfect, until Brielle discovers a secret he's been hiding for a long time that just might shatter their fairy tale love. And passing it along to Adrienne.
Thanks, Jasmine. Next slide. Hi, my name's Adrienne Weitraub, and I'm the Executive Director of the School and Library team. And this slide shows some of our wonderful continuing graphic novel series with new adventures coming this spring. And a special call out to Hilo, everyone's favorite extraterrestrial, who will be celebrating their 10th anniversary in 2025. And over to Katie Dutton.
Next slide, please. You're invited to the wildest competition of the year. Survive the Safari is about a group of 5 kids who are selected to compete in the Wildland Safari Escape Challenge at their local zoo. An exciting, nail-biting adventure blended with realistic and engaging characters, this book is also full of fun animal facts, maps, puzzles, and more, which make it a perfect read for classrooms everywhere. Next slide. Award-winning author Olugbemisola Rude Perkovic's Operation Sisterhood series continues with Stealing the Show, a heartwarming sequel about the sisters' decision to put on a community musical. This phenomenal, joyful middle grade novel is a story centered around 4 young Black tween sisters from a patchwork family, each of them bursting with personality and talent. And as a proud Harlemite myself, I am particularly fond of how it showcases their vibrant Harlem neighborhood as a joyous community full of love and support. Next slide. We all just had the immense pleasure of hearing directly from Newbery and Pura Belpre honor-winning author Andrea Beatriz Arango. We are so excited about Andrea's upcoming novel in verse, It's All or Nothing VALE. It's the story of how one girl discovers that the sum of your achievements doesn't amount to the whole of you. When 12-year-old Valentina is finally cleared to return to her fencing gym after months recovering from a leg injury, her body just doesn't move the way it used to. Now VALE must find who she really is outside of her past accomplishments and her new disability. From complex family dynamics to crushes to finding yourself, this book hits many classic middle grade notes while also showcasing girls in sports, normalizing therapy, and showing a meaningful, authentic representation of being Latina, disabled, and queer. Next slide, please. If the past year has taught us anything, it's that everyone watches women's sports. Girls and women in sports are finally starting to get the attention they so rightly deserve, and thankfully, that means we're getting more books about them. Like VALE, B. Mullins is a tenacious tween figuring out her queer identity while navigating middle school and learning to face her fears. In B. Mullins Takes a Shot, our plucky protagonist is forced to join her school's hockey team in an empowering, hilarious story about first crushes, fierce friendships, learning from mistakes, and what happens when you realize you're in danger of losing everything you didn't know you wanted. Next slide. For as long as they can remember, Mac, Lena, Milo, and Avery have spent Family Week, the world's largest annual celebration of LGBTQIA+ families, together in Provincetown, Massachusetts. But this summer, their beach house feels different. Avery's dads are splitting up. Milo has just flunked 7th grade. Mac is heading to a progressive boarding school that lets transgender kids like him play soccer, and his twin, Lena, feels like the entire world is changing around her, while she just stays the same. This book is an inclusive, intersectional celebration of diverse identities and families, while simultaneously addressing the real concerns and anxieties around big changes. It's perfect for fans of Kyle Lukoff, Ashley Herring-Blake, and Alex Gino. Next page. From Ellie Swartz, the beloved author of Hidden Truths, comes a new middle grade novel about censorship, activism, and a group of rock star librarians. In the same page, you'll meet Bess, an earnest 6th grader who is outraged about a book ban happening in her middle school and takes action. It's a timely, relevant story that skillfully incorporates nuanced topics such as friendship drama, anxiety, freedom of speech, and Bess's Jewish faith with an engaging and relatable voice. And back to Erica.
Okay, next slide. This is the second book in the Misfits series. Oof. After solving the case of the Royal Rumpus, Olive, Coben, Zhang, and her elite team of underdogs are on top of the world. As the awkward crime-fighting misfits, they're acing every mission thrown at them from NOC, aka No One Can Know, the covert agency they work for. But when unusual earthquakes start shaking up San Francisco just as priceless art goes missing, the misfits are called in to investigate. Is this a coincidence that their city, or is their city under attack? Get ready for the next Misfit adventure from Newbery honoree Lisa Yee and Caldecott medalist Dan Stantat. Don't miss this next installment. Next slide. The Princess Swap book 1 and 2. What would happen if Cinderella found herself in Beast's castle and Beauty woke up in some evil stepmother's home? Ella is thrilled to be free of her stepfamily, but a Beast isn't exactly the replacement she had in mind. Belle was supposed to be getting ready for a competition, but this wicked family is going to make that extra complicated. Can the girls switch back in time to follow their dreams, or is this switch actually a crucial part of Happily Ever After? This new series is Fairy Tales meets Freaky Friday, and is poised to be one of the biggest crossover hits to hit Once Upon a Time. This series is sure to delight young readers with humor, heart, and a huge dose of adventure. Next slide. Pour yourself a mug of hot, rich chocolate and curl up with a classic cozy, short and sweet middle grade mystery with just the right hint of spookiness. In this standalone follow-up to A School for Invisible Boys, we learn more about a paranormal secret agency whose existence was revealed at the end of book 1. Sam, a side character in the first book, takes over as protagonist, using her special ability of disguising her true appearance to go undercover and attempt to track down a hidden list of magical beings living among us. Twists and turns abound, as well as more subtle themes and messages. This time about how not to judge people too quickly and assume we always know good from evil. Next slide. The Dragon's Apprentice. The New York Times bestselling author of Story Thieves moves to RHCB with a new series filled with the same humor and meta fantasy that made Story Thieves a reader favorite. It's the middle grade fantasy buddy comedy you've been waiting for, as a grumpy dragon woken from a nap that lasted several thousand years too long reluctantly agrees to take a young girl apprentice and teach her magic to help her save her mother and find answers to what happened to his original apprentice. Next slide. It's Watching. This is a chilling middle grade novel from the New York Times bestselling author of Scritch Scratch. It's Watching. Three teens enter real-life haunted cemetery, Bachelor Grove, hoping to get a fun Halloween scoop for their school newspaper. Instead, what they get is a creepy meme with a countdown. It's Watching, it says, and they have only 2 days to figure out what it is. And I'll hand it back to Katie.
If you're looking for a book to read curled up in a cozy chair with a cup of tea, this is the one. The Secret of Honey Cake will make you feel warm and wholehearted and sure that things can be right in the world. It has a girl, a dog, a cat, lots of delicious food, and an intimidating new life for our introverted heroine, Hurricane, far away from all that she loves. This affirming story set between World Wars I and II has very short chapters that make it super accessible, and it's a great pick for educators and librarians seeking SEL-focused novels that validate introverted kids. Next slide. From Karen Cushman, the Newbery Award-winning author of Catherine Called Birdie and The Midwife's Apprentice, comes When Sally O'Malley Discovered the Sea, the story of an orphan on the American frontier who decides to go west with nothing but gumption as her guide. With a pitch-perfect middle-grade voice that's a masterful blend of humor and heart, this book has everything: a feisty heroine, animal companions, danger, wonder, exploration, and the realization that there is strength in learning to be vulnerable and to count on others. This is truly an unforgettable delight of a story from one of our most iconic middle grade writers.
And next slide, please. Thank you. Curious kids love facts, and it tends to be true that kids of a certain age love gross facts. And this book, The Big Book of Barf, is absolutely full of gross facts. But it's not just full of facts. It's also full of science, and in some cases, even the history behind the facts. What science and history respecting librarian could say no to this? In this nonfiction work, the character Professor Anita Puke leads readers through many topics listed alphabetically. So you can see it's a funny book too. Next slide, please. History Smashers, Earth Day, and the Environment. Kate Messner is back with her 10th book in the History Smashers series. The book's on many state award reading lists, the series that has garnered critical acclaim. The books that tell nothing but the truth about history and smash the lies and myths that we have all been taught. Earth Day and the Environment might be her most relevant book to date. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues we and our middle grade readers face. In Earth Day, discover the real story behind the first Earth Day celebration and some of the biggest U.S. climate catastrophes, as well as their solutions. Next slide, please. And climate is just the start. Climate change is discouraging and very frustrating, but Michaela Loach is a voice that offers real hope. She is an activist, an author, and she's passionate, energetic, inspiring, and just cool. She leads climate justice movement demonstrations, organizes and leads direct actions. Her work lies at the intersection of environmentalism and social justice. This is a book about how climate issues intersect unavoidably with a lot of social justice issues. And it's an invitation to join her in the work she's already doing. She doesn't give lectures, she writes stories. Stories about her work and about the work of fellow activists. Stories about people affected by climate change. She's honest and identifies very clearly who and what is responsible for the climate crisis. And like I said, she inspires real hope. And I'll pass it over to Adrian.
Thank you. And since we know how important series are to middle grade readers, here's a slide with some of our series that will have new chapters in 2025. Next slide. This next slide shows 3 titles that are going into paperback. First is, or actually in the middle, is the Newbery winning Eyes of the Impossible by best-selling author Dave Eggers. Then we have Wrong Way Home by Kate O'Shaughnessy, which was called a strong, emotionally intelligent story in a starred review from Kirkus. And third is award-winning May Respicio's novel in verse, Isabel in Bloom. Next slide, please. Here are some other books coming out in paperback that you shouldn't miss. And next slide. This slide is exciting. Christopher Paul Curtis has won many awards and honors, including the Newbery Award, multiple Coretta Scott King Awards, and most recently, the Virginia Hamilton Lifetime Achievement Award. Random House Children's Books is very honored to have published most of Chris's books, and we thought it was time to repackage 3 of his most beloved titles so that a whole new generation of readers would be excited to read the adventures of Kenny, Bud, and Deza Malone. And over to Katie.
All right, we're going to move on into young adult. We can go to the next slide. Lucha of the Forgotten Spring. Fresh off her triumph in the Night Forest, Lucha Moya is back in Roboto to settle unfinished business. In this page-turning conclusion to the Latinx folklore-inspired duology, Lucha must face long-avoided fears to save the people she cares for, or risk losing everything she's fought so hard to obtain. This compelling and complex fantasy duology is perfect for fans of Elizabeth Lim and Aidan Thomas. Next slide. Dear Manny. New York Times bestselling author Nick Stone writes from a new perspective in this exciting final chapter of the Dear Martin series that examines white privilege, love, and politics. Set on a college campus against the backdrop of student government elections and told from the perspective of Jared, Justice's white friend from Dear Martin, this book explores popular topics such as what it means to be a true ally and what it takes to create a progressive future. Dear Manny also critiques our political landscape through the 3 candidates as they run for junior class president. This is a must-read for fans of Nick Stone, along with readers who enjoy books from Angie Thomas and Jason Reynolds, plus anyone passionate about social change. Next slide. A bird in the air means we can still breathe. Grief, pain, hope, and love all collide in this short story collection from award-winning author and poet Mahogany L. Browne. A Bird in the Air Means We Can Still Breathe is a poignant mixed voice, mixed form collection of interconnected prose, poems, and stories told in the voice of teen characters, their families, and their communities as they grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic. Malachi writes an Armageddon short story inspired by his pandemic reality. Tariq helps his ailing grandmother survive during quarantine. Samira struggles with depression and loneliness after losing her parents. Muhammad tries to keep his community spirit alive. Amidst fear and loss, these New York City teens prevail with love, resistance, and hope. Next slide. True Life in Uncanny Valley. Eleanor, like so many others, is used to watching her famous father from afar. To the world, Hugo Harrison is the brilliant and charismatic tech genius whose AI inventions seem to create a new and better reality. But to Eleanor, whose mother had an affair with Hugo many years ago, he's something even more intriguing and dangerous, a secret. When Eleanor's spying leads her to a posting of a live-in summer nanny job for Hugo's young son, her half-brother, she knows that she has to apply. But when she finds herself caught between her own secrets and the ones that she's uncovering about her father and his latest invention, Eleanor faces a question that technology can't answer. What is your true self, and how do you know when you find her? From the acclaimed author of A Heart and a Body in the World, True Life in Uncanny Valley is the gripping story of a girl living a lie in order to find out the truth. And now over to Jasmine.
Starting the fantasy section with Brewed with Love. In this cozy contemporary romantasy, meet plant witch Sage Bishop, who intends to run her family's apothecary one day. The doors just have to stay open until she can take over from her Nana. That's why she spends all her time perfecting a tonic that put Bishop Brews on the map. But when someone steals the tonic, she has to team up with Simina, her latest hire, and ex-best friend, to find the culprit. As the mystery deepens, so do the pesky old feelings. Will she be able to resist Simina's charm, or will she let it work its magic for a second chance at love? Next slide, please. On the Wings of la Noche. Death waits for Estrella Noche Nueva, In her human form, she's a lonely science girl grieving the tragic, accidental drowning of her girlfriend, Dante Fuentes. At night, she's a lechuza who visits her dead girlfriend at the lake, desperate for more time with her. The longer Dante's soul roams on the earth, she's more likely that she will fade into the unknown, lost forever. But Noche cannot let go. That's when a new kid comes to town, Jax, and she can't deny how an invisible thread pulls them together. As Noche's heart begins to beat for two people, her guilt flares, and when she finds herself at risk of losing both Jax and Dante, she is forced to question her purpose as a lechuza and everything she has ever believed. Next slide, please. Unhallowed Halls. Paige Whitaker has always been an outcast when she receives a scholarship offer from Agathon College, an elite boarding school folded deep within the moors of Scotland. She doesn't even consider turning it down. She's ready for her new start. Agathon is everything Paige has ever wanted, a safe haven full of dusty books, steamy cups of tea, and rigorous intellectual debate. For the first time in her life, Paige has even managed to become part of a close group of friends. But the only problem is they're all keeping secrets from her. Paige doesn't know it yet, but her perfect new school has dark roots that stretch back to its crooked foundation and an ancient clandestine society with rumored ties to the demonic magic. Next slide, please. Scorpion and the Night Blossom. From the New York Times bestselling author of Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, comes the beginning of a dark, opulent fantasy duology. 9 years ago, the war between the Kingdom of Night and the Kingdom of Rivers tore Anyang's family apart, leaving her mother barely alive and a baby sister to fend for. Now the mortal realm is falling into eternal night, and Mo, beautifully ravenous demon, roams the land, feasting on the flesh of humans and drinking their souls. Anyang is no longer a helpless child, though. Armed with her crescent blades and trained in the ancient art of partitioning, she has decided to enter the immortality trials. Those who complete the trials are granted a pill of eternal life, the one thing Anyang knows can heal her dying mother, but to attain the prize, she must survive the competition. To save her mother and herself, Anyang will need to figure out whether she can truly trust the stranger she's falling for, or if he's the most dangerous player of all, and for herself and for all the realms. Next slide, please. Samadina, from the National Book Award finalist and author of Pet, comes a novel set in a magical West African world. Samadina and her twin brother are practically the same person. They finish each other's sentences and make each other's other whole. When the twins come of age, their magic gifts begin to develop. But while her brother's power enchants, Samadina's causes fear to ripple through the town. Always an outsider, Samadina now faces blatant and dangerous hostility, and things go from bad to worse when her brother, the one person she trusted, vanishes. Samadina knows that no matter the dangers, she must track him down, even if it means entering the sacred forest, even if it means finding the hidden places where the closest to the spirit world don't dare to go. Next slide, please. And taking it in a different direction, we have a book about friendship. This is Summer I Remembered Everything. Emily Chen Sanchez can't do anything right. She's been grounded for her bad grades. She can't stop fighting with her perfect older sister. Everyone's tense because her mother's just been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Her new summer job is the perfect escape as a companion to a lively, super southern elderly lady, Miss Granucci. All Emily has to do is help Miss G remember her likes, dislikes, and anything Miss G has a habit of forgetting, even Emily's name. Emily feels closer to Miss G than everyone else until Miss G falsely accuses Emily. The betrayal will have ramifications for them both, and Emily must make a decision that will change their lives forever. I'm passing it along to Adrian.
And in the romance section, Beloved YA romance writer Casey West is back with a new novel, Better Than Revenge. When Finley's star football kicker ex-boyfriend gets the podcasting spot that she has always wanted, there's only one thing to do: get on the football team in his spot. To do this, she must ask for help from her boyfriend's conceited nemesis. This is a romance, so we know what happens next. But is true love really better than the perfect revenge? Next slide. Christy Boyce's 2024 book, Dungeons and Drama, is a hit. With its play on Dungeons and Dragons, teen players can't get enough. She's back with the standalone but complementary Dating and Dragons. When Quinn starts at a new high school, she joins the D&D club to make friends, and it doesn't hurt that cutie Logan is in it. Just like the game, the group has rules. One is no dating between members. But this is also a romance, so we all know what's going to happen. This one is sure to be a hit with your teens. Next slide. Alice Lynn spent years as a YA librarian in New Jersey and has a knack for creating extremely realistic and relatable characters. In Love Points to You, 16-year-old Linda Fan has the skills and the drive to get into the Rhode Island School of Design, but not the money. So when her rich and arrogant classmate, Angela Wu, offers to hire Linda as a character designer for a love story-based video game, she jumps at the opportunity. Linda isn't exactly a romantic, but in pursuit of her dream, she discovers that things she never knew about herself while also finding love with every heart she draws. Next slide. K.L. Walther, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Summer of Broken Rules, has written yet another playful, exuberant romance full of funny banter, wild antics, and off-the-charts chemistry. Loosely inspired by Ferris Bueller's Day Off, While We're Young will appeal to teens and crossover readers who love those John Hughes nostalgic vibes. Get ready for the most epic senior skip day ever. Next slide. And now for something different. Some of you might know Erin Stewart from her Schneider-winning book, The Words They Keep. With every borrowed beat, she brings her lush and poetic writing to a story that is personal. Inspired by the author's own experiences with heart failure, she tells the story of what happens when Sydney gets herself involved in the lives of her heart transplant's family and friends. Erin has included a note about her personal stake in the story. This is a touching story not to be missed. Next slide. Amelie Howard, the author of Queen Bee, is back with a companion novel, an anti-historical novel featuring a BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ cast. If you have readers looking for an inclusive YA Regency romance with an unapologetic girl gang fighting the rules and structures of 19th century English high society, this is for them. Lady Night is more than a love story. In addition to first love, it explores themes of friendship, taking chances, and believing in yourself. Next slide. Ivy Raines needs summer camp for an escape like she did as a child. After going through a very public breakup with her first girlfriend and teen TV show Megastar, she wants nothing more than a summer of sunshine, friends, and s'mores. But when she signs up to run the camp's musical production, she soon finds herself in a rivalry she didn't see coming. As the days get hotter, will Ivy discover she can still have the summer escape she needed after all, in the way her heart has always wanted? From the author of I Think I Love You. And over to Erica.
Hey, Wicked Darlings. New from Jordan Taylor, author of The Revenge Game, get ready for an exhilarating ride with Noah, an aspiring journalist with dark secret. Ever since her sister's tragic death, she's been haunted by conflicting emotions. Noah and Leia have always been in fierce competition, but when her sister scored an internship at a prestigious New York society paper, their rivalry reached a boiling point. Now fueled by a newfound sense of independence, Noah is determined to unravel the suspicious circumstances surrounding her sister's demise. Next slide. 2 years ago, the murder of their English teacher tore 3 best friends apart. Now the killer is going to walk free and the ex-friends are going to have to face the past and each other. Told in alternating perspectives, this is another amazing twisty thriller by Liz Lawson, New York Times best-selling co-author of the Agatha series. Next slide. A carefree New England vacation is just what 16-year-old Lucia needs to chase her sadness away because nothing bad ever happens on Nantucket. But when Lucia stumbles on the body of a teenage girl on the beach, the discovery opens old wounds from her past. With the dead girl's identity a mystery, Lucia takes it upon herself to investigate and crosses paths with the beautiful Selah and her pack of devil-may-care besties. Debut author Rachel Ekstrom Courage was inspired by silky myths from the Nantucket lore when writing this book. And over to Katie Dutton.
The world is about to end again. And in a choice I'm sure many of us understand completely, 17-year-old Liz Flannery is spending her final weeks before the impending cataclysmic storm holed up in an abandoned bookstore, where she retreated after the first earth-shattering climate disaster. Her solitude is interrupted by Maeve, a prickly and potentially dangerous girl who shows up looking for shelter. As the girls' initial animosity turns into something more tender, they realize their secrets might be an even greater threat to their survival, and that if they don't learn how to trust each other, it just might be too late to save themselves and each other. Already the recipient of starred reviews from Kirkus and PW, The Last Bookstore on Earth is a genre-bending, category-defying sapphic love story filled with humor, hope, complex characters, a post-apocalyptic setting, and, of course, books. Next slide, please. The experiment continues in Dead Happy, the dark and disturbingly thrilling conclusion to the Happy Head duology by Josh Silver, where Seb will find the secret to escaping is more heart-wrenching than he ever imagined. Perfect for fans of They Both Die in the End, Black Mirror, and 14 Ways to Die, this duology is equal parts thriller, dystopian, and love story. And over to the other case.
Okay, rounding things out with some nonfiction, we have The Swans of Harlem. Adapted for young readers, The Swans of Harlem is a riveting account of 5 extraordinarily accomplished women and their hard-fought, historic, and overlooked contributions to the world of classical dance at a time when racism shut out Black dancers from major dance companies. This book is a celebration of both their historic careers, the sustaining, grounding power of female friendship, and a window into the robust history of Black ballet hidden for far too long. Next slide. Eve. Why do women live longer than men? Why do girls score better on every academic subject than boys until puberty, when suddenly their scores plummet? Is the female brain wired differently? These questions and common debates around scientific claims are thoughtfully examined in this groundbreaking New York Times bestseller, now adapted for young adults. This brand new adaptation is a friendly, funny, and engaging read. It explores teen-related topics such as mental health and the biology behind it, and will delight any young reader looking to understand the body, its amazing history, its wondrous capabilities, its oddities, and its mysteries. Next. Death in the Jungle. Candace Fleming is a master of narrative nonfiction, and her latest offering is a chilling chronicle of one of the most notorious cults in American history, Jonestown. Using riveting first-person accounts, Fleming reveals the making of a monster, from Jim Jones's humble origins as a child of the Depression to founding of a group whose idealistic promises of equality and justice attracted thousands of followers, to his relocation of temple headquarters from California to an unsettled territory in Guyana, South America, which he dubbed Jonestown, to his transformation of People's Temple into a nefarious experiment in mind control. Death in the Jungle is a sweeping story that traces step by step the way in which one man slowly indoctrinated and then murdered 900 innocent, well-meaning people. This is perfect for fans of true crime, history buffs, and anyone looking for a suspenseful page-turner. Next slide. 2 of our notable spring 2025 YA paperback titles include the Kirkus Prize finalist Bright Red Fruit, a novel told in verse that Kirkus Reviews called a stunning work that deeply explores poetry, the complexities of identity, and the longing for love in a starred review, and National Book Award longlist title Ariel Crashes a Train, another novel written in verse that School Library Journal said was a deeply compassionate and sharp-edged dive into OCD, in another starred review. Next slide. Our paperback offerings also include epic fantasies, page-turning thrillers, continuing series, and compelling characters. There's truly something for everyone available on this slide. And I will turn things over to
Okay. And that concludes our title presentations for the Spring 2025 list. A huge thank you again to all of our panelists, Julio Anta, Kay O'Neill, and Andrea Beatriz Arango for joining us today. For more information about our upcoming books and to download free resources, please follow us on Pinterest, Facebook, and Twitter, and visit us online at rhteacherslibrarians.com. Lastly, ARCs and FNGs of all the titles presented today are available for request on Edelweiss and NetGalley. Thank you again for tuning in. See you next time.
Thank you so much to the Random House Children's Book team and to our special guests, Julio, Kay, and Andrea, for such a fantastic presentation today. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, title list, slide presentation, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Attention all library workers, educators, booksellers, and students. We have a special subscription offer exclusive to webinar attendees. Subscribe to Booklist now and stay on top of the latest books, glean readers' advisory guidance, and get collection development advice through print and digital editions of Booklist and access to Booklist Online. Plus, our Booklist subscription now comes with free digital and shareable copies of our new product for patrons, Booklist Reader. Scan the QR code or visit our website for more details. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and one more huge thank you to our guests and to our sponsor, Random House Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.